Today we'll be going over expressing intention in Japanese in 3 different ways. So looking at the ways first, our first way we'll go over is with the volitional verb form plus tomo. Our second way will be with the verb plain present form plus tsumori. And the final way will be with the verb plain present form plus yote. So if we come over here to our right, we'll see this intention increasing arrow that I created here that shows that as you go down this list, the intention you get off increases. So starting with the volitional verb form plus tomo, when you say this, it's like saying I'm thinking of doing something. So for example, let's say I'm thinking of going to Hawaii. Now if we go to our second one, the verb plain present form plus tsumori, it's like saying I intend to do something. Or sticking with our example, I intend to go to Hawaii. And with our final one, the strongest one, the verb plain present form plus yote, it's like saying I plan to do something. So I plan to go to Hawaii. So it's like I plan to go to Hawaii versus I intend to go to Hawaii versus I'm thinking of going to Hawaii. So hopefully that kind of helps with visualizing the difference in intention levels between these three, with the yote being the strongest and the tomo being the weakest. So we're going to start with figuring out how to make the volitional form of a verb before we start going into the volitional form plus tomo. So we'll start with how to change the godan verbs or the u verbs into the volitional form. So we gotta go over some rules first that they have. Let me write down some rules. So, well, rules more like steps. The first step that we do is we get the plain form of the verb. Get the plain form of the verb. And the second step that we do is we drop the u or u sound. So it's either dropping the character u or the u sound. And we'll get into what that u sound is later, because just hearing it first like this can be kind of confusing. But I'll go into a couple examples. But the final step will be adding an o characters, or the ou sound. So with those 3 steps that we have for getting the volitional form of a u verb or a godan verb, we can go and do some examples to kind of flesh out these rules so people can understand it. Because when I was first learning this, I had no idea what my textbook nor my teacher was talking about when she just said the oo sound or the o sound. So examples are the best way to get it. So for examples, let's start with the word, okay, or a verb. Let's go with tsukao. Tsukao, which means to use. Now, looking at our first step, if you can read this, is to get it in plain form, which is already in plain form. So what would be an example of getting it into plain form, or at least visualizing it into plain form? Well, if you want to make tsukao into a mas form, it's tsukai mas. So seeing this, you'd have to know to switch it to tsukao. At least if you want to follow these steps. So this will change into this plain form. So our next step is to drop the oo or u sound. So this has an oo in it, so we're going to drop that, and that's going to change to tsuka, just for now. And then we go to our third step, which is adding an ou, or adding an ou sound, or an ou or o sound, or characters. And how we do that is just adding o to the end. So tsukao, tsukao. That is the volitional form of the verb to use. So this would mean something along the lines of let's use. That's what that would translate to in English, would be let's use. So let's go to the next example. Let's do sagasu. Sagasu. So this verb, ooh, that's a terrible su. This verb, sagasu, means to look for. Now, looking back at our first rule, it's already in plain form. Or our first step, it's already in plain form. So then we drop the oo or u sound. Well, we don't see an oo, but su ends in a u sound right here. So what do we do with that? We get rid of it and we add an o in its place. So it changes to so. So this would change to saga so, still adding that u character at the end. So sagaso would be let's look for. That would be the volitional form. Let's get rid of, let's make some space here. Do a couple more examples. We're just going to put that over here. So let's go to our last couple of examples. Let's do noru. So noru means to get on or to board. So you'd use this verb when getting on a bus or getting on a plane or getting in or on some type of vehicle. So in my class, some people would see noru and they'd think, oh, it's a ru verb, and they'd start doing the volitional form in the ru steps and not the u verb steps. So that is one thing you really have to pay attention to, is that is it an u verb or is it a ru verb? Now noru is an u verb, that's why it's here. So what do? Well, there's no u, but there is an oo sound at the end of ru. So what we do is we change that to an o sound, and then we add the oo character to the end. So that would look like noro, noro, noro. That'd be let's get on, let's board. So it's like let's get on the bus. Basu ni noro, basu ni noro. Fune ni noro, to get on the ship. So this would be the volitional form. let's get on, or let's board. So let's go to our final example, which would be motsu. Oops, that has a terrible mo. Holy. Let's go motsu. That's still a pretty bad mo. Oh well. So motsu means to hold. So looking at this is another one that people in my class, and including me, would be confused with seeing for the first time, because tsu is TSU in Romanji, and I don't know why this confused me at first, because you just get rid of well, actually I do. We'd get rid of the U sound, and we'd still have a TS. So we'd be like, do you keep the TS? Because, well, it's the first time learning Japanese. So what you actually do here is just you get rid of the SU in the tsu, and you just put the O plus the U particle, or the U character, and you would get moto, let's hold. Now it does sound kind of awkward, but it's just to kind of get that idea of, if you see tsu, you instead of just getting rid of the U sound, you instead just go into the same line of hiragana, and you pick the one that has an O. So it's like you have ta, chi, that's a terrible chi, tsu, de, to. If you have ta at the end, you change it to to. You have chi, changes to to, tsu, changes to to, and te changes to to. It all changes to to, because you change it to the O sound. So you can also think about less of getting rid of an U sound or a U letter, and more of going to the hiragana. You change the hiragana to the one that has the O at the end. So now let's go down to the next section. We're going over the ichidan verbs, or the uru verbs. So we're going through the steps again. So first one is the same as the last one. Get the verb in plain form, or dictionary form as some people call it. And then the second step would be to drop the ru. So you drop the ru at the end of a ru verb. And then the final step would be to add yo to the end of it. You want to add yo. So we can go over some examples, and hopefully that'll be helpful in solidifying how to do this. So let's do a practice one. Let's do a kimeru. Wait, yeah, I am. So we have kimeru here, which means to decide. Now, what do we do here? So it's in plain form, and we have to first drop the ru. We drop ru. So we have kime, and then nothing. We dropped it. So our next step would be adding yo. Kime yo. Not kime yo, kime yo. You have to have the extension at the end. You gotta add that u hiragana to the end. And that would mean let's decide. So remember, getting rid of the ru and adding yo, the yo hiragana with the u hiragana at the end, extending that pronunciation. Kimeyo. Now let's go on to another example. We'll do a pretty common one, common word, taberu, which means to eat. Now, what do we do here? Well, we know, looking at our list of steps, it's in the plain form. Next is to drop the ru. Getting rid of that, we have tabe, and we have to add yo. So you have tabe yo, let's eat. Now, let's do one final example. So let's do yameru. Yameru, which means to quit doing something. To quit doing something. So first thing we do, pause it if you want to see. First thing we do is get rid of the do. Let's bring it down. Yame, what do we add? We add yo. Yame yo. Yame yo. That is, we add that yo with the u at the end. And this would mean let's quit. Or let's quit doing something. Now, the final section for the volitional form is with the irregular verbs. Let me make some space down here. So, with irregular verbs, I was taught, in my class at least, there were two. There are more than two, but there's two ones that are, I would say, the mascots of irregular verbs. And that would be suru and kuru, which is to do and to come. So let me write those out. So we have suru, which is to do, and we have kuru, which is to come. So with these irregular verbs, there are no really steps to them. There's no 1, 2, 3 step to doing it. It's more of a memorization. You're memorizing it. But it's only 2, so it's not really that bad, and it's not really like an extravagant memorization thing that you have to do. So we're going to start with suru. The volitional form of it would be, ooh, that has a terrible shi. Shio. Shio. That means let's do. Now, we're going to pause here. So, what some people do that is wrong when reading this is they read it like shio. You do not want to read it like that. Do not read it like that. You want to read it as they're separate things. Shi, yo, with an extension. So actually that's just going to be a long thing on top. So shio, not shio. You do not want shio. You want shio. You want to pronounce the entire shi in that. That's just one thing that I messed up in my class, and that a few other people in my class did. We'd say shio when we were supposed to say shio. And that was that was only in the first class, but it's just a small little minor thing that pronunciation goes a long way. So now let's go to our final irregular verb, which is kuru, to come. So the volitional form of kuru is koyo. Let's come. So koyo is a little bit easier to not mess up, just like quickly reading. Mainly because it's not kiyo. And if it's kiyo, a lot of people would say probably kyo. But no, koyo. Let me, I was writing here romanji, but koyo. That's let's come. That is the volitional form of to come, kuru. These two you will have to memorize. They're not really that, it's not that bad. It's just another thing without rules, and it's more of just, I'd say this shio and the sho is the thing that got most people. It was less of memorizing and is more of, they'd mess up on this. That was the big mistake with me and my other classmates, but it's not that bad. Okay, now that we've covered or reviewed more of the volitional form and how to form it, we can now look at the how to express intention with it, with the volitional form plus tomo. Remember, this being the weakest one, and it's a tentative intention, so it's not agreed or it's not certain. So remember, using the volitional form plus tomo is like saying I'm thinking of doing something. So let's go over. Okay, with that, let's start our volitional form plus tomo rules and how to form it and some examples. So let's just again go over some basics. The volitional form means it can be translated as let's or shall we. Shall we is when you ask a question of the volitional. So let's go over some of the endings with the tomo and what they would mean in this context with the volitional form. So let's start with our current thinking. So our current thinking, you would want to say omoimasu. You'd want to end with omoimasu. Ending with omoimasu, to omoimasu, would come across as your current thinking. Now, that might not make too much sense until I bring up this second option, which is has been thinking for some time. Now, how would you express that you've been thinking about it for a long time? Now, the importance in expressing between these two is actually pretty great. So, how would you do this? You go to omotte imasu. So if you want to say that you've been thinking about it for a long time, you go to omotte imasu. If you're doing a current thinking, it'd be to omoimasu. So some English translation examples would be kind of like I'm thinking of going to SeaWorld versus I've been thinking of going to SeaWorld. So it's a difference in it would change the intention level a little bit actually, because it's like a one-off thing with the current thinking, like a spur-of-the-moment thinking, like I'm thinking of going to SeaWorld versus I've been thinking of going to SeaWorld. So there's a lot more emphasis here with the sometime when using omotte imasu. Now I ask you, what if the subject is something other than the speaker. Well, this is actually kind of interesting. So let's do this. Subject other than speaker. What do you do when it's that? Well, for both of current thinking and trying to express has been thinking for some time, you use to omotteimasu. You use to omotteimasu for both when talking, when the subject of your sentence is not you. So it's like it's like saying, let's say Yosef has been thinking for a long time about going to SeaWorld versus Yosef is thinking about going to SeaWorld. In both of those, you would use to omotteimasu. Let's clean this area up a bit and let's do some examples, some translating examples. I'm just the best at drawing squares around text. Oh my god. So let's put that over there. And let's do some translation examples. Actually, that's kind of taking up space. We're just going to delete it. So let's do this. And it'd be best to pause to try and translate yourself if you know the vocab. If you don't know the vocab, I'm going to state the vocab words first, and then you can translate it using the rules that I set out. So, let's translate, let's go with I'm thinking of taking a ship. So let's go over the vocab first of what's in the sense for us to translate it. Well, first we can look at the word ship. That's the word that we need. We need the word for, or the verb actually, for taking. And we know that the statement of I'm thinking of is the to omo. That is the to omo of this sentence. And remember, this is me talking about myself, not talking about another person. So let's go over what these are in vocab terms, what the vocab is. So ship would mean, you'd say ship in Japanese would be fune. That is ship. Taking, the verb for taking, or not taking as in I'm going to take something from you. It's more of getting on or boarding a ship. So I'm thinking of riding a ship, boarding a ship. So when you think of taking a ship, you don't, in English, you don't think, oh, he's going to steal a ship. You think he's going to ride a ship. He's going to get on a cruise ship or something and have a vacation. So what would the vocab word here be? It'd be noru. So noru, which we did talk about actually when we were looking at the volitional form and how to form it. Noru is a naru verb, but is an u verb or a godan verb. Meaning it's not as simple as taking the ru off and putting a yo. It's not no yo. It is not that. And then this last part is just tomo. This is part of what we were talking about earlier. So given these, form a sentence that translates to I'm thinking of taking a ship using the volitional form of noru plus to omo, or any of the other endings for tomo that we said. So to do this, we will start our sentence with fune. So let's go. Fune ni no. And how do you find the volitional form? Well, because this is an u verb, we get rid of the u sound of ru. So noru, will change to noro. Because remember, you take the u sound at the end of ru and you just replace it with an o, so it becomes ro. And then you add that u hiragana at the end. So it would change to, well, that's a terrible ro. So be fune ni noro, and then what? We need our to omo. To? That's a terrible to too. To. And what do we do for this ending? Omo what? Since we haven't been thinking for a long time, it's just currently I'm thinking of. So it's not I've been thinking of. And it's not talking about a third party, it's talking about me. So it would be omoimasu. So I'm thinking of taking a ship would translate to fune ni norou to omoimasu. I'm thinking of taking a ship. That's our first example. Let's go on to our second one. We can move over actually. So let's translate the sentence, I've been thinking of returning to my house. So I've been thinking of returning to my house. Now first we're going to go over the vocab that you need, just in case you don't know the vocab. So let's look. I've been thinking. Let me get that blue. I've been thinking. That's going to be some form of to'omo. So that is what we have to know for our ending. Now we go over here, returning to my house. So we can see house and returning. We see a place and we have a verb. There's a few ways to say house, but we're going to go with ie. Ie. That means house. And if you want the kanji for house, we'll see if my amazing calligraphy comes through. This is house in kanji. And there's a few different readings to how to say house, but ie is usually my go-to to say house in Japanese. So we have our house vocab, and returning is kairi, or kaeru. Returning is kaeru. Kaeru. If you want the kanji for returning, let's see if my calligraphy is good again. That is the kanji for, this is the kanji for kaeru, or to return home, or to return. So let's now translate it all. And pause here if you want to first translate it by yourself and see if it matches my translation. Now, not all translations need to match mine exactly. Things can be translated differently. It happens all the time. I could be wrong, but if it's close, and if somewhere else on the line is saying that it's right, It's the fun in learning. So let us start translating it. So we're going to start with house, or ie. So ie ni. And then we'll go with returning, or to return. So we have kaeru, kaeru. Now, what type of verb is kaeru? Well, kaeru is not a ru verb. It is not an ichidan verb. It is a godan verb, or an u verb. So, you don't just take off the ru and add yo. It's not kaeyo. It goes, we get rid of that u sound in the ru, change it to o, so we know it's kaero with that extended o. Kaero. So, ie ni kaero to. And then I've been thinking. So, it's trying to say I've been thinking for a while. Not just currently thinking, you've been thinking for some time. So, it'd be, the ending would be to omotte imasu. So the full sentence translated of I've been thinking of returning to my house would be ie ni kaerou to omotte imasu. Ie ni kaerou to omotte imasu. That is, I've been thinking of returning to my house. Let's do another example. So let's just move over again. That's easier, isn't it? So let's translate the sentence. I'm thinking, let's do, I'm thinking of drinking too much. Now this one might be a little bit harder if you don't know a little bit more grammar, mainly because of the too much part at the end. So let's go over the vocab real quick. So we see I'm thinking, and that's our ending with tomo, a form of tomo. We have drinking, which would be nomu. Let me write that actually. Nomu, to drink. If you want the kanji for this, let me write it real quick. Nomu, this is the kanji for nomu, to drink. And then too much. So with too much, it's something that you add to the end of a verb. And you can change the end of this additive like it is a ru verb. So too much would be sugiru, and sugiru means too much when adding to a verb. So sugiru at the end of nomu would mean drinking too much. So how would we do this? Now first I'm going to attach nomu to sugiru to make it easier, since this isn't a video on sugiru and how to connect it. So drinking too much, how you would write that would be nomi sugiru. And you treat this as a ru verb. This is a ru verb now. You treat this as a ru verb, not an u verb, a ru verb. So a ichidan verb. That is what you treat this as now. So now that you have that, try and pause and try to translate this yourself before checking back in. Okay, let's translate this. I'm thinking of drinking too much. So we're going to start with nomi sugi Now remember, this nomisugiru is now this entire thing is now a ryu verb, or an ichidan verb, if that's how your class taught it, or if that's how you self-study it. So with this uru verb or ichidan verb, how do you change it to a volitional form? Well, you get rid of uru, and what do you add? Yo. So nomisugi yo is the volitional form of nomisugiru. So what is our ending now? To omo. What's the ending after this? Now, since it's I'm thinking of, not I've been thinking, and the subject is me and not another person, it would be omoimasu. So the full sentence translation of I'm thinking of drinking too much would be nomisugiyo to omoimasu. That is the translated form, or the translation of I'm thinking of drinking too much. So now let's actually go to when the subject is someone other than you. Let's translate one like that. So let's translate one. So let's bring back our friend Yosef. So Yosef is thinking of buying a giraffe. Let's go with the giraffe. That is our sentence. So now let's go through the vocab so you can write it. So first, let me write out in katakana how to spell Yosef. Yo se, and then Yosef ends in just an F with nothing at the end, but we're just gonna put fu, so it's Yosefu. Or at least that's how you would read it in katakana. Yosefu-san. That is Yosef. And now we see, let's go to the rest. Is thinking of. That is not saying has been thinking of. So we kind of know what our ending is, because it's someone other than the speaker, and it is thinking of. But also you have to remember, it doesn't matter if it's talking about the current thinking of Yosef, or saying that he has been thinking about it. There's no difference with what it will end with. The sentence, what will the sentence end with, if he is currently thinking or has been thinking. So now we have another verb here, buying, and then we have what he is buying, which is a giraffe. So let's go over buying. So buying, the vocab word for that would be call, or to buy is call. If you want the kanji for that, here's the kanji. Call. And then giraffe would be kirin. I have a terrible There we go. Kirin, giraffe. Now how would we form the sentence? Now pause here if you want to try. If you don't want to try and you just want to walk through, that's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to start with Yosef-san. Yosef-san wa what is Yosef-san doing? Well, he's buying a giraffe. So we're going to go, or thinking of it. Yosef-san wa kirin o. And then we go to buy. Now, how would we put to buy into its volitional form? Well, thinking back to the rules for volitional form, this has an u, not just a u sound. It has the hiragana for u. So we get rid of that. And what do we add? Since it's a godan verb or a u verb, we make it an o. So the volitional form of kao would be kao, a longer o sound. So it goes from kao to kao. Maybe not that exaggerated, but it kind of helps to exaggerate to understand that they're not supposed to sound the same. This is supposed to be an extended version of the o sound at the end rather than just kao, kao. It's a little slight, but you'll be able to hear it with practice. So now we have the volitional form of to buy. So we have Yosef-san wa kirin o kao to. And remember, there's only one ending that you use when you're talking about something or someone other than the speaker. So when I'm talking about when someone else is talking about themselves, or I'm talking about someone, or I'm talking about myself, then there's a difference between what me or them will use. When we're talking about someone else and their thoughts, we only use one ending. So when the subject is someone other than the speaker, we use to omotteimasu. Omotteimasu. That is the final translation. So the final translation for Yosef is thinking of buying a giraffe will be Yosef-san wa kirin o kao to omotteimasu. And that is the translation for when the subject is someone other than the speaker. So now let's go over the verb plain present form plus tsumori. Okay, so with verb plain present form plus tsumori, with this one, with intention, if you remember from the beginning, is that it is much stronger than the volitional form plus tomo. So when you use this, it's like saying, I intend to do something. So instead of I'm thinking of doing something, I intend to do something. There's more intention behind it. Let's actually do some examples. Well, first, knowing what verb plain present form is, that's like, let's do this. So, nomu, to drink, that would be the plain present form. So if you want to add tsumori to do it, sorry. If you want to add tsumori to it, you go nomu tsumori. And that is how you add it. So the verb plain present form could also be called the dictionary form, if that rings more bells than verb plain present form. But let's actually just start with some example sentences. So let's do tonight I intend to drink. Now I'm going to go over the vocab real quick, but if you know the vocab, pause here and try to translate the sentence. So let's go with this. So tonight is a vocab word that you might not know. I intend to, or I intend, is the tsumori ending, and to drink is the verb. So as I said at the beginning, that kind of ruined the surprise with what we're translating. So we're just going to go, well, drink, nomu, I intend to is the ending, and tonight is konban. So how would you translate the sentence. So let's start. So we're going to start by saying konban. And we're just going to put a comma. And then we're going to go nomu. And we want to add tsumori. So, tsumori. Since this is the plain present form or the dictionary form of to drink, nomu. Nomu tsumori. Now, we have to look at the ending of tsumori. And you can leave it without an ending, and that would be a sentence. So, konban wa nomu tsumori. That would be a sentence. But, how we want to put an ending on it. And the two endings I have in mind differ in being formal or casual talk. So if we want to do casual talk, we just add da. So, nomu tsumori da. That would be the casual. Let's actually change that to a color. Oops. Let's change that to a different color so we know. There's a difference. So we have da. Or we can put des. So tsumori desu. So da is the casual and des is the formal way of doing the ending. So translating tonight I intend to drink. Konban nomu tsumori da or konban nomu tsumori desu. Those are the two ways. Now this is a new one. You're intending not to do something. Not that you don't have intention. Your intention is just not to do something. So let's first go over the vocab. So we first see tomorrow, I intend, which is the ending tsumori. And then we have to not drink. Now how would we do this? So first let's look at the vocab. And tomorrow, ashita. I intend to is the ending, and to not drink would be, well, we know to drink is nomu. But we want to say to not drink. So how do we make this a negative? We go nomanai. So when you want to change a godon verb or a godon verb or an u verb, the same thing, to negative, you change the ending to an a ending. So nomu to nomanai. And that is how you change the u verb or godon verb to a negative. So nomu to drink, nomanai to not drink. So now that we have all that, how do we form the sentence? So if you want to pause here and translate yourself before I translate it, go ahead. But we're going to start. So we're going to start with ashita. Oh, ashita wa nomanai. So ashita wa nomanai. So we have tomorrow, nomanai, not drink. How do we add tsumori? Well, nomanai is the dictionary form of its negative, of nomu's negative. So nomanai is a plain present form. Plain present form does not mean that it's positive or that's affirmative. It just has to be in its plain present form, which nomanai is. So we can just go ashita wa nomanai tsumori. And again, tsumori da or tsumori desu. Let me just write that again. Tsumori da. Tsumori desu. So the translation for tomorrow, I intend to not drink, would be ashita wa nomanai tsumori da. Ashita wa nomanai tsumori da. or ashita wa nomanai tsumari desu. That is how you translate that. Let's go back over here and let's go down. So this is a new part. How do we express a lack of intention? So to do that, it's not going to be making the verb negative as we did before, as we did in the example before. That just made it an intention not to do something, but it wasn't giving a lack of intention. There was still intention. So how would we do this? Well, let's think of a sentence. So we're going to translate, Yosef has no intention to drink. How would we translate that? Well, let's first go through the whoopsies. Let's first go through the vocab. So we have to drink here. We have has no intention, and we have Yosef. Has no intention, that's the ending, tsumori, but it's different. It's lack of intention, no intention. And then to drink, nomu. So give it your best guess on how to make it so there's a lack of intention. How would you do that? Now, since I didn't go over the rule yet, most people probably will not have an idea. They would have an idea, and it might be wrong or it might be right. So we're going to just translate it now. So we're going to go Yosef-san. Well, Yosef-san wa nomu tsumori. And then what? Tsumori wa. And then you can pick two things. Again, depending on if you're formal or casual. So, nomu tsumori wa nai. Or, nomu tsumori wa arimasen. Nai being the casual form, and arimasen being the formal form. So let's kind of dive deeper into, or at least let's flesh out the way of saying a lack of intention. So what you do, let's just go down a bit. So if you have tsumori, you add a wa, so tsumori wa, and then for casual, nai. So whatever your sense is, tsumori wa nai. And that is the end of that casual sense. Now doing the formal again. Tsumori wa, and then tsumori wa arimasen. That is the lack of intention formally, in a formal way. Tsumori wa nai and tsumori wa arimasen. That is the way how you express a lack of intention. Now, just to have a little check, we're just going to write an example for all three ways, just to have an easy little place to compare all three of these ways. So let's do I intend to drink. I intend not to drink. And let's do I have no intention to drink. Or I do not intend to drink. How would you translate all three of these? So if you want to pause and try to translate them yourself, go ahead. But we are going to start. So with I intend to drink. Well, nomu tsumori and da, or des. So I intend to drink, nomu tsumori da. Now let's go down to I intend not to drink. So remember, I intend, there's still an intention, but not to drink. So to not drink. So we go nomanai tsumori da, or des. And then our final one, I have no intention to drink. How would we do that? Well, again, nomu tsumori wa nai. So looking at all three of these, I intend to drink, nomu tsumori da. I intend not to drink, nomanai tsumori da. Nomanai tsumori da. And I have no intention to drink, nomu tsumori wa nai, or nomu tsumori wa arimasen. So let's go over our last form and the strongest form out of all three of these with expressing intention. So remember, using the verb plain / dictionary form or just the verb plain present form plus yote means I plan to do something. So it is the strongest way to give off intention. So let's go. It can be a little confusing because yote isn't only a ending. It can also be a noun when there's no modifier. So let's look at that first, actually. So let me actually get rid of this real quick. We're looking at it as a noun first, just so it can kind of make sense, because if I introduce this as just the ending, you might see it as a noun and you could get confused. I got a little confused seeing it in the middle of a sentence, and I had to do a little bit of research because I did not read as well. But let's go with it. So without a modifier, yote, that's a terrible te. Yote is the noun for plan. As a noun. Yote is a noun with no modifier, when it has no modifier. So let's do a sentence example. So I don't have plans today. How will we translate this? If you want to try to translate it before I do, you can pause. But we're going to go ahead and do it without pointing out the vocab until the end. So actually, we'll go through it during it, actually. So we see today. What is today? Kyo. This is the kanji for today. So let me actually. Kyo. So we do kyo wa. And then yote. I'm going to write the kanji for yote here. Yote ga arimasen. So kyou wa yote ga arimasen. I don't have plans today. That is when you're using yote here as a noun. That is when you're using it as a noun. So when you're using it, how this way of sending a intention is, it's at the end with sometimes an ending, and we'll go over some example sentences that isn't a noun. Let's go over a little bit more detail about yote with using yote as a form of giving an intention to do something. There's a couple rules with it, or kind of steps. You can say it's both. So first, yote follows the plain present form of a verb, as it did in the previous ones. So nomu, it'd follow nomu. Nomu yote. Yote is followed by des or da. So like tsumori, it's followed by des or da. And the distinction between if it ends in des or da is, again, remember, da is when it's a casual sentence. Des is when it's a formal sentence. So you won't say da in front of your boss. You'd say des. Or in front of someone that you're not close to or you didn't know, you wouldn't use da. You'd use des. Now with yote, another thing about yote is that the subject can be any person. Or the subject of the statement can be any person. And it won't change. It won't change the ending or how you have to say it. So let's go over some examples, actually. So let's translate I plan to rest at home. Now I'll go over the vocab here. So again, home, we've seen that in a previous one. To rest, we haven't seen that one in this video yet. And then I plan to. So I plan to is gonna be the yote ending. So how would you translate this? Well, let's first go home, ie, and to rest, yasumu. Now what's the kanji for to rest? Let's do, this is the kanji for to rest, yasumu. So yasu is in this one kanji and the mu stands on the outside. So let's translate this and pause if you want to translate it beforehand, but we are starting. So let's start with house. I'm going to write the kanji for it here. So ie de, then you might be asking, why isn't it ie ni? Well, de, use de when an action or an event is happening at a place. So it's not like I'm returning home. This de particle is saying that the resting is happening at home. Watashi no ie. It's happening at my house. So I plan to rest at my house. So use de particle when the action is, when you're trying to describe the place where that action is occurring. So it's not like to get on a train, use ni. So like densha ni noru, you use that. But if you use densha de noru, it doesn't make sense really, because de is not used to say you're doing an action. You are, for de, you're trying to say an action is happening at a location or a event is happening at a location. So ie de yasumu. Now remember, we don't have to change yasumu because it's already in this is its plain present form, or its dictionary form, as some people say. And what do we add after that? We just add yote. So ie de yasumu yote. Ie de yasumu yote. How do you end it? Well, let's just pretend it's formal. So you go des. So the translation for I plan to rest at home would be ie de yasumu yotei desu. That is the translation. So let's do another example. So I'm going to line out the vocab again. If you know the vocab, pause and you can translate. But we will go over the vocab. So you see my birthday. I plan. So we know that's the ending that we have with yote. And then we have to go out, which we haven't seen yet. And then with, which will need a particle, and friends. So first, to put an emphasis on it being my birthday, we're just gonna, the my is gonna be watashi no. Watashi no. Birthday is tanjoubi, and tanjoubi would be tanjoubi. Now, how do we write that in? And to write that in kanji, I will do that when I translate the sentence. But we will just keep it as hiragana until we translate. So, and remember, I plan, yote, and then to go out. So, to go out would be dekakeru. So, to go out, dekakeru. And friends, tomodachi. That's a pretty common one. I think so. So now this is all the vocab you kind of need. So if you waited for the vocab to be listed out, pause here and try to form the sentence. Try to form it. So we're going to start. So like I said earlier, we're going to start with watashi no, and we do tanjoubi, and we'll do the kanji here. So tanjoubi has a pretty interesting kanji. Tanjoubi. Watashi no tanjoubi ni. So this ni is kind of emphasizing that it's on, like during or on my birthday. Then we go tomodachi, and I'll do the kanji for tomodachi as well. This is tomo, and dachi. Tomodachi, and then with, the particle you want to use is to. So tomodachi to means with friends. So you want to use to for that with. And then dekakeru, we'll actually also do the kanji for that. We'll do it down here. De, this represents de in dekakeru. Kakeru. And again, we don't have to change the ending of this verb because we're doing yote. So the ending, what's the ending? It's just yote, or yote desu, or yote da. So dekakeru yote. Dekakeru yote desu. So the translation for on my birthday, I plan to go out with friends. How I translated it would be watashi no tanjoubi ni tomodachi to dekakeru yote desu. That is how I would translate on my birthday, I plan to go out with friends. Now let's do one more example. I plan not to sleep. That's a terror. My English is not doing so well. I plan not to sleep. So let's go over the vocab for that real quick. And if you know the vocab, try to translate it. But we're going to go through the vocab. So I plan. Well, I plan still means we have intention. So we're not going to change anything with yote. We're going to change something with the verb, since there's still an intention just not to do something, which is not to sleep. So we know it's going to end in yote. And then we have not to sleep. So you might be thinking, well, we know sleep, to sleep, is neru. But it is not an u verb, so we do not change the ru to a ra, so it's not neranai. Instead, we get rid of the ru, and to make it not to sleep, we go nenai. Nenai. That is to not sleep, or not to sleep. So, with all this vocab laid out, pause and try to form the sentence. So we are going to start. So we're going to start with nanai, which is still in its plain present form. Just because it's negative does not mean it's not its plain present form. And then we're going to add yote to the end. Nanai yote da, or nanai yote desu. So it can end in da, or it can end in des. It can end in either of those. So the translation for I plan not to sleep is nanai yote da, or nanai yote desu. So now let's go back over here. And let's go down. So we want to express, what if we want to express a lack of a plan or a lack of intention? So I don't have a plan to go, I don't have a plan to go to Hawaii. I don't plan to go to Hawaii. Or I plan not to. There's a difference between I plan not to go to Hawaii versus I don't plan to go to Hawaii. One of those is planning to specifically not go, and the other one is saying there just isn't a plan to go. So there's a difference of intention or a plan. So let's do some example problems, and then I'll kind of explain what it is on the way. It's very similar to tsumori if you want to try pausing early when I write out the sentence to translate. So we're going to start with I don't plan to go fishing. Now, how would we translate this? Well, let's look at the vocab first. So, I don't plan. Well, there we know it's yote, but it's different because there's a lack of a plan. It's not I plan not to go fishing, it's I don't plan. And then we have to go fishing, or to fish. So the vocab for to go fishing would be, it'd be tsuru. And that is to go fishing, or to fish. So we don't have to change anything there because, again, it's yote and we don't have to really change anything. So pause here and try to form the sentence. Even though we don't know how to do this yet, just give it a guess. It's very similar, if not the same, to tsumori. So we're going to start. So we'll start with tsuru, or to go fishing, to fish. Yote. So we have tsuru yote wa, and then nai or arimasen. So I lied with saying it's very similar. It is exactly the same. So again, nai is the casual form and arimasen would be the formal form. So to say I don't plan to go fishing, tsuru yote wa nai. Tsuru yote wa nai. Or tsuru yote wa arimasen. Those are the two ways, casual and formal, to say I don't plan to go fishing. You can see here, remember, we don't touch the verb here. We touch the ending to yote. Yote. We don't touch the verb. We don't make the verb negative. Because just making the verb negative does not change if there is does not change the intention that you're giving. So let's do one more example. Let's translate I don't plan to work. Let's translate that. So I'll go over again, the vocab. If you know the vocab, try to translate it and unpause when you're ready. So we're going to go over the vocab. So we have to work and we have I don't plan. So again, the ending of yote will be the thing changing. We do not touch the verb. But what is to work? What is the vocab word for it? So is the vocab word to work. Let me get out blue. We're going to go back to white. It would be hataraku. So we have hataraku. And again, we don't have to change the verb. We don't have to do that because we're not saying we intend to not work. We're just saying we don't plan on working. So there's no plan to work versus there's a plan not to work. This is saying we don't have a plan to work. So let us translate this. So if you didn't pause and you want to have a little more practice, try to form the sentence. So we are going to start. So, hataraku. Ooh, that's a terrible yo. Oh, hataraku. Yote wa. And again, either nai or arimasen. So the translation to I don't plan to work would be hataraku yote wa nai or hataraku yote wa arimasen. Those are the two ways, the casual and the formal way to say I don't plan to work, which is the lack of intention to work. Not planning to not work, but you don't have a plan to work. So that was the expressing intention in Japanese with the volitional verb form plus tomo, the verb plain present form plus tsumori, and the verb plain present form plus yote. If I mess up anything, or if anything's translated wrong, just comment it. I am still learning, but I hope any of this helped.